Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Riancho, and these are my running back rankings for Week 15. We're going to start with an injury report, then show you the matchups, and then get to the rankings. So let us begin in Arizona, where Trey Benson was placed on IR, not going to return. Rest of season, it's going to be Bam Knight and Michael Carter. In Cleveland, Dylan Sampson has been ruled out with a calf and hand injury, did not practice at all this week. And it looks like Jerome Ford was also placed on IR. So Judkins will get massive volume this week. They might bring in a backup, but I could see a 90% volume distribution in favor of Quinshon Judkins. In Green Bay, Josh Jacobs is questionable with a knee injury. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, but did come back on Friday and was limited. I'm expecting him to play, but obviously it's not ideal. He's not 100%. Woody Marks is also questionable. I think he's going to be more healthy, however. Didn't practice Wednesday with a knee injury. Then limited on Thursday, and as of this recording, I'm not quite sure about Friday, but I assume he'll be okay. I think he'll play. However, Nick Chubb is unlikely to suit up. Didn't practice at all this week with a rib injury. Dare Ogunbowale will be the backup. DeVon Achane, questionable with a rib injury as well. He was limited on Thursday in a non-contact jersey. However, they play on Monday, so they still have another practice even on Saturday. I think he'll be active. This is trending positively. However, if he's ruled out, you want Jalen Wright as a handcuff. Aaron Jones is questionable in Minnesota. He's dealing with a shoulder injury, limited all week in practice, but that's been recurring. I think he'll be available. In New Orleans, Devin Neal, questionable with an abdomen injury, limited all week in practice, expected to play, and I'm not worried. I think Devin Neal is going to be all right. He's also more valuable because Alvin Kamara didn't practice at all this week. Again, not expecting Kamara back on the field. In New York, with the Jets, Breece Hall didn't practice Wednesday, but then was limited Thursday, and I think he'll be active come Sunday. He's dealing with a knee injury. His quarterback situation is gross. However, I think he'll be on the field in this game. In San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey dealing with an illness is questionable, but I'm sure he'll play. And then lastly, in Washington, Chris Rodriguez didn't practice with a groin injury Wednesday, but then on Thursday, he was limited, and I believe he will suit up on Sunday. So that's it for the injury report. Now let's move on to the matchup stats. And this chart shows you every single defense in the NFL, how many points per game they're giving up to the running back position. In blue, those are the points per game on the year, but in red, perhaps more valuable information at this stage of the season. I really don't care about the months of September or October. What are you doing recently? In red, we have the last 4 games, and those stats I think are very, very valuable to know this week. So let's run through the slate. Number 1 matchup on the season would be the Bengals. That's the Derrick Henry matchup this week. However, in the last 4 games, much more below average and definitely not the ideal spot that it once was. Down to 18.3 points, that would rank 19th across the league. And maybe Derrick Henry isn't the best play, but still I would trust him to probably score a touchdown against the Bengals. The second best matchup on the year would go to Chris Rodriguez and the Commanders this week against the Giants. It's definitely a good spot. In the last month, they're actually ranking number 5, but they're giving up even more points than on the year. So a great spot for Rodriguez. I think a touchdown will hit as well. As long as he plays, I think he's a solid flex option this week. But the third best matchup on the season goes to Travis Etienne. And if you look closer in the last month, this would be the best matchup overall. So I love Etienne this week. Think he's going to crush. Just like last week when he had 2 touchdowns, I could see that repeat. I also think Bhayshul Tuten does benefit against the Jets. Fourth best matchup this year goes to Woody Marks of the Houston Texans. The Cardinals can't stop anyone. Their defense is kind of quitting at this point. They have nothing to play for, and they're also piling up a bunch of injuries. So Woody Marks with a lot of volume, no Nick Chubb, going to play lights out. I love Woody Marks this week. In Buffalo, that's a great matchup for TreVeyon Henderson and Rhamondre Stevenson. It's trending slightly down, but still ranks as a positive top 11 matchup. I still consider that a valuable matchup to chase, but maybe it's going to be tougher to pick the correct Patriots running back this week. It's not automatic that we're getting multiple touchdowns. In Washington, that's been a top 6 matchup on the year, but top 3 in the last month. So Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary going to get a big upgrade here. I see this game as a massive shootout, so I want pieces of it. I like the Giants offense this week. So Tracy, pretty interesting. Singletary, I don't trust as much, but in Dallas, that's been a good matchup this year. It is trending much more average at the moment, down to 20.1 points per game, and that would rank 15th in the last month. So Aaron Jones gets vultured by Jordan Mason. It's a time split. I don't know if you're getting more than 10 points from either Vikings running back. In Philly, that's been the 8th best matchup on the season. And in the last month, it also ranks number 8, but it's even trending more positively, up to 25 points per game. And Ashton Jeanty has this backfield all to himself. I think Jeanty's going to crush. This is one of the reasons why I predicted the Raiders would upset Philly. I believe Jeanty is an excellent play against the Eagles. Christian McCaffrey gets the 9th best matchup this season. The Titans are getting tougher, though. If we look at the last 4 games exclusively, it's down to 15.8 points per game. That would rank number 25 in terms of matchup rankings. So bottom 10 matchup, definitely not ideal, but with Christian McCaffrey, he's a lights out matchup proof player, and there's no way you're benching Christian McCaffrey. The Devin Neal matchup, that one I love this week. He gets the Carolina Panthers, who are coming off a bye. Sometimes teams make significant improvements off the bye week, but the Panthers have been trash at defending running backs lately, giving up the 4th most fantasy points in the NFL. Those last 4 games, an average of 28.1 points, is a matchup I want. So Devin Neal, a great option this week. I think you should be starting him if you have the space. Saquon gets the next positive matchup, 11th best on the year, top 6 in the last month, and Saquon did just dial up a great performance against the Chargers. That matchup was much tougher. I'm trusting Saquon in this game. In Baltimore, that's been a relatively good matchup this season, but is trending downwards at the moment. Number 20, so below average. Chase Brown is getting so much volume in the passing game with no T. Higgins. I kind of don't give a shit. I would still expect Chase Brown to be a good play. The Bijan matchup was just above league average, 13th best, so he played very well. And Rico Dowdle gets an equally advantageous matchup this week. So Dowdle should be okay unless Chuba Hubbard vultures him. I think Dowdle's fine. However, this next matchup is trending really poorly, and maybe I should have lowered Bucky Irving in the ranks going into last night. I told you to start Bucky. The Sean Tucker touchdown was so annoying, and sadly Bucky Irving wasn't elite. He looked good, but in the second half, they didn't really give him the rock enough. Next matchup goes to Quinshon Judkins against Chicago, and although they are trending slightly down at the moment, still relatively neutral, I think the volume will be insane for Judkins given the injuries to Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. Judkins I think is a lock in the lineup. Achane gets the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are trending up at the moment, top 9 matchup, giving up just shy of 25 points per game. As long as Achane is healthy enough to play Monday night, you got to start him, but I would want to handcuff him to Jalen Wright. Next matchup goes to the Steelers backfield. Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell actually are not players I trust this week at all. Against Miami, that matchup is trending dead last, only allowing 12.4 points per game. So maybe a touchdown boosts that up this week, but if you're splitting this volume between both Warren and Gainwell, that's a projection of 6 points each. And that would suck if that's what you get. So I'm actually very reluctant to endorse the Steelers backfield. And then next matchup is San Francisco, which is getting a bit better. However, against Tennessee, if Pollard didn't have a house call or 2 last week, you wouldn't trust either Titans running back. So good luck there. Technically, it's a downgrade. And then these next matchups, there's a couple that are positive, but for the most part, you want to be downgrading most players. But the Colts are trending up. So one of the last good spots here for Walker and Gainwell. Sadly, it's a touch split that's hard to bet on. But if they divide it equally this week, you're getting 12 points apiece from Walker and Charbonnet based on what the Colts are allowing. 24 points would be nice between the two. Hunt and Pacheco get the Chargers. That matchup is allowing less than 20, and I think they might step up even more against the division rival. I think the Chargers will stop Kareem Hunt. Got a bad feeling about the Chiefs backfield. The Javonte matchup is equally as neutral, but he doesn't split touches with anyone, so got to start him. If he gets 80% of 19 points, that'd be pretty good. Next matchup, though, is for Swift and Monangai. And although they're splitting it, this one is trending very positively at the moment. There's some injuries piling up in Cleveland as well. And I trust Swift and Monangai to play lights out. I would expect double digits from both. If they're splitting 27 points, that would be pretty dope. I trust Swift and Monangai quite a bit. Next matchup, it goes to RJ Harvey against Green Bay. They're giving up more than 20 per game as of late, and he's been lights out since Dobbins has gone down. I'm definitely starting RJ Harvey. But Bam Knight and Michael Carter, I have no interest in against Houston. I think this is going to crater. The Cardinals cannot run the ball. So this one I think is a major avoid. And at this point, we are clearly only talking about bad matchups. None of them are positive the rest of the way. The Chiefs are a tough spot for Hampton and Vidal, and Kimani was more involved last week than I would have thought. So I don't really trust either Chargers running back to be lights out. They weren't elite back in week 1 in this matchup either. The Rams defense is getting a little easier, but still one of the toughest on the season. And Gibbs is matchup proof, but I'm a little reluctant to fully endorse David Montgomery this week. The Seahawks, a tough spot for Jonathan Taylor with Phillip Rivers in the mix. These stats indicate you're not getting more than 15 points from Taylor this week. So good luck. I think he can still double that production, but I would be a bit worried about the Colts without Daniel Jones. Denver has been a really tough spot, bottom 3 in the last month and bottom 4 on the year. So not a good spot here at all. Josh Jacobs dealing with an injury, I don't think is as safe as you might think. You got to start him. But if he's not 100%, they might be leaning on Emmanuel Wilson. A little extra. I'm worried about Jacobs this week. Not going to lie. The Jags matchup, though, is the toughest in the last 4 games. Just as bad as the Dolphins. And Breece Hall with a third-string quarterback is going to be dog shit. So can't trust Breece Hall this week. An automatic bench, in my opinion. And then these last 2 are also very tough. The Patriots against James Cook. You probably don't care. Still going to start James Cook. And then the Lions against Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. This one is actually pretty tricky. The touch split between the Rams backfield is actually why I might be a little low on Kyren this week. But that's it for all of the matchups. We got some good opportunities here, but also some big landmines to avoid. So now let's sort through the position and go through my rankings in week 15. A reminder, this channel is intended for half PPR, but if you do have a question, drop a comment down below and I'll help you adjust for your scoring settings, whether it's standard or full PPR. I'm happy to offer my opinion. But at number 1, I am trusting Christian McCaffrey the most of them all this week. I know the Titans matchup is actually trending slightly down at the moment. However, I really don't care. We saw some elite production in terms of yards per reception out of the Browns backfield last week. And off a bye, there's no way I'm betting against Kyle Shanahan. So I'm expecting the Niners to absolutely dominate this game. I think they're going to win by blowout. I think him and Kittle are each probably getting 2 touchdowns apiece this week. I love CMC a lot. So he's my number 1. Shocker, you're starting Christian McCaffrey. And then obviously you're starting Jahmyr Gibbs as well. This Rams matchup is not ideal either. It's been bad on the season, but last few games it's trending slightly up. However, in general, you know Gibbs has some of the highest upside of them all. So this high-end threshold, tier 1, is pretty obvious, but I will just give you one note on Jahmyr Gibbs. He's played 2 games against the Rams in his career, and in those matchups, he's averaging only 13.5 touches, 4 receptions, 71 yards per game, and he does have 2 touchdowns in this sample size. So touchdowns a lock, but only 15.1 points per game. Sometimes they do limit his yardage, but the volume has been much higher this season. His role is expanding, and he's no longer kind of behind Dave Montgomery. So absolutely start Jahmyr Gibbs, and then I 100% endorsed Bijan Robinson yesterday on the live stream. Pretty obvious, no-brainer call, especially without London. You have to keep expecting Bijan to be a top 3 play, but that matchup was the best of these 3. Potentially, Bijan does outscore McCaffrey and Gibbs. He had 175 total yards last night. In tier 2, I also expect a league-winning performance out of all these players. If you have them, you have to start them. There is no effing chance I'm benching any of them. And the reason I have Travis Etienne at the top here is because of the matchup. Last week was awesome. He was lights out last week. But this week, I think he could be even better because the Jets defense is atrociously bad. In their last 4 games, they're allowing an average of 34 points per game. That is the most that any defense is giving up. And the average stat line is 129 rushing yards per game, 41 receiving yards per game, 4.6 yards per carry, and 10 running back touchdowns. Even if Bhayshul Tuten does vulture him this week, I would expect at least 2 touchdowns from this backfield. I could see Etienne dominate like he did last week and not share anything. If Etienne goes over 150 yards this week and 2 touchdowns, not going to be surprised at all. So truly an elite matchup. The Jags are going to roll and the Jets have no shot. I could see 11 plus possessions for the Jags as well. The Jets are going to start a 3rd string quarterback behind Tyrod Taylor. The Jags offense will dominate time possession. So love the volume for Etienne. Only concern is if he gets benched in the 4th quarter, but Bhayshul Tuten is not going to vulture him enough. Etienne I think is the best play outside of the top 3. But James Cook should dominate against the Patriots. His average stat line against them maybe isn't the most impressive. In his last 4 games, he's averaging 15.5 touches, 1.8 reception per game, 80 yards per game from scrimmage, and does have 3 total touchdowns in this sample size. That's an average of 13.4 points per game. So you're hoping for more than that, but I don't think the Patriots are going to limit him enough. It's not a good matchup this year, definitely more of a downgrade in general, but they're still giving up 4.8 yards per carry in the last month. And despite only 1 running back touchdown, James Cook is a player that's capable of dropping 3 house calls. So I cannot be benching James Cook. I don't think his upside is as high as Etienne this week, but he's still so talented and capable of winning the entire week. There is no effing chance I'm going to bench James Cook. The Bills, I think, will be hungry for the win. They lost that first matchup, and James Cook is their best offensive player other than Josh Allen. He'll get the rock, he'll get a touchdown, and he probably gives you a house call. Love the efficiency metrics here. I'm trusting James Cook. But DeVon Achane, as long as he's healthy, is obviously a lock in the lineup. This Steelers matchup is a pretty good one. Last 4 games, averaging just shy of 25 points per game allowed on 137 rushing yards, 43 receiving yards. We know Achane is going to dominate in that regard. They're also giving up 4.6 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns to the position in the last month. So Etienne is, generally speaking, a lock for a touchdown most of the time. Obviously, there's a minor red flag because of his rib injury, but I think he'll play. The non-contact jersey, I think, will come off by Saturday's practice. So it is a Monday game. You want the handcuff. Even if Jalen Wright is taken, I think you should have Ollie Gordon on your bench if you're worried about it. But as of this taping, I'm expecting Achane to play, and if he's active, you have to start him. There's no effing way I am benching DeVon Achane. So that's a no-brainer, just a matter of his health. And then Chase Brown, I think, is also a lock in the lineup. T. Higgins is not going to play. That's what happened 2 weeks ago against the Ravens as well. And in that game, Chase Brown had 7 targets, 7 receptions. Despite only putting up 35 receiving yards, he had 78 on top of that on the ground. So 22 touches total. And if we look at the last 3 career starts against the Ravens, these are his average stat line in those 3 games. 19.7 touches per game, 6.3 receptions per game, 87 yards and 2 touchdowns in that span. He is averaging 15.9 points per game against Baltimore. So the PPR production will be elite. I think in full PPR, I might have him as the best running back in this tier. I think he'd be clearly top 5. I think I would have him above James Cook. Maybe not above Etienne, but given Achane's health status, I was tempted to put Chase Brown even above DeVon Achane. But at number 7, clearly a must start. There's no way you're benching Chase Brown. Now we move on to tier 3, and all these players are ranked in the top 12, so there is no argument I am making to be benching them. Even if you're in a 14 league, you're starting all these running backs. But Jonathan Taylor, I will be honest, I don't think will be that league-winning option this week. If you're telling me he puts up 30 points against Seattle, I'd be shocked. I know he's capable of doing that, but you know Seattle's going to stack the box, and there's no way they're going to let Jonathan Taylor beat them. If anything, let old man Rivers try his hardest. I don't think it's going to work out. So I'm really worried about time of possession in this game for Indianapolis. I don't think their drives will sustain very long. And unless Taylor's giving you a few house calls, I really don't see him dropping multiple touchdowns. So a touchdown I think is really critical for the outcome this week, but it's not like Jonathan Taylor is playing very well. Since the bye week in his last 3 games, he has been very average, an average of 12 points per game on 21 touches, 2.5 catches per game, 87 total yards per game, but only 1 touchdown in those 3 games. And in terms of yards per carry, only averaging 3.7. The yards have been shit for Taylor since coming off the bye. And his game before the bye was that 50-pointer against the Falcons in Germany. It has been completely opposite since then. So just looking at those 3 games, you're already worried about Taylor. Then you factor in Rivers under center, and there's no threat of a running quarterback. So every single play, there's going to be 8 men specifically targeting Jonathan Taylor. I don't think he's going to play very well. I think you're really relying on a touchdown this week. Without it, I think there's a world he gives you less than 10. I wouldn't be shocked if Taylor plays like shit, because the Colts look awful on offense. I'm really worried about that team. But to tell me you're going to bench Taylor because you're that panicked, that would also be insane. I have him at number 8. I'm downgrading him. I'm not telling you he's better than Chase Brown or Etienne this week, but I'm still telling you, you have to start him. Number 8 at running back, obviously, is in your lineup. So don't get it twisted. I'm not telling you to bench him, but I'm absolutely projecting fewer points. And if all of that argument wasn't enough, here are the matchup stats against Seattle. Last 4 games, they're only giving up 14.6 points per game to the position. 79 yards on the ground, 28 in the passing game, 3.8 yards per carry. That's what Taylor's averaging already. And then only 1 touchdown to any running back in those last 4 games. This is not a good spot. Let's not pretend like you're upgrading Taylor just because you're expecting Rivers to hand it off 40 times. I know the volume will be insane. However, the matchup and circumstances are not good. Taylor is a risky option. I don't think he's a top 3 play like he has been all year. So good luck. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm definitely downgrading him at RB8. That's my lowest rank on him since like week 1. I don't know what Taylor is going to do this week. I think it will be less than what you're hoping for. Saquon Barkley comes in right behind him, and I'm definitely not benching Saquon after last week. You got to be encouraged. And based on draft capital, he's your first round pick. If you got to the playoffs with him, I think you're just accepting your fate at this point and hoping for the best. So Saquon should play well. I think it could be similar to last week's game. The Raiders are a great matchup. Last 4 games, they're giving up just shy of 28 points per game, and we don't worry about a backup. So almost all of that will go to Saquon, and if he drops 25, I think it's possible. But there have been some rough games for Saquon. That's why I can't put him above Taylor or in the top 7. However, the average stat line for the running back position against Vegas is 126 yards on the ground, 39 in the passing game, 4.4 yards per carry, and 6 touchdowns in that span. I think a touchdown, if not 2, is a very, very good bet on Saquon this week. So if not for an elite volume going to Taylor, I would probably have Saquon higher. And then if not for like elite volume in the passing game for the top tier and even better matchups, I might have Saquon in the top 5. I think there's no way I'm benching Saquon Barkley. Clearly a top 10 play in my opinion. But Jeanty, I think, is going to be awesome this week. I am fully endorsing Ashton Jeanty. If you somehow made it to the playoffs with Jeanty, this is the matchup you are hoping for. The Eagles are really a liability on defense right now, allowing 25 points per game, 133 yards on the ground, 56 in the passing game, 4.9 yards per carry, only 3 touchdowns. So if Jeanty scores a touchdown, I think he could actually have a better yardage total than Saquon. I think he's going off. I really believe the Raiders are going to give the Eagles a run for their money. So against Saquon, I'm sure Jeanty wants to play well. I trust him. I like this matchup. I think the Eagles defense is going to sleep on their opponent. So Jeanty, I'm trusting to play very well. I made a prop bet on Underdog this week. I hit the higher on 100 yards from scrimmage. I think he's going to be lights out. I love Ashton Jeanty, a top 10 play in my opinion. But RJ Harvey has been a lock in the lineup since Dobbins has gone down. He's been elite, and there's no way I'm benching him. Despite the matchup against Green Bay, it doesn't scare me enough, and it is trending a little positively as of late. Giving up more than 20 points per game those last 4 weeks, that's fine, just above average. And 109 rushing yards per game, 31 in the passing game. That'd be awesome if Harvey gets like 75% of that. So I'm optimistic that Harvey gives you over 100 yards from scrimmage as well, just like Jeanty. And then a touchdown is usually a safe bet. They've been relying on him in the red zone pretty often. He's a lock for a touchdown, in my opinion. So based on his production, based on that offense, based on how important this game is, I think they play well. I think Harvey is a great option in fantasy. However, I did endorse Bucky Irving yesterday. If you watched the live stream, I had him one spot above actually, but still behind Harvey. Since then, I have put Jeanty above. So that's why Bucky does move down one spot, but I did endorse him vehemently last night. And sadly, it didn't work out. Sean Tucker vultured him, and that was really, really egregious play calling. So blame Todd Bowles and the offensive play caller for the Bucs. That was very unfortunate, but maybe I should have seen it coming. This matchup against the Falcons actually ranked really low in the last month. They had only given up an average of 13.6 points per game. So apologies there, but based on how Bucky was playing, kind of like Saquon, if you made it this far, why would you be benching Bucky Irving? So sadly, a bit of a disappointment last night, but hopefully it was enough to keep you competitive. Now we're moving on to tier 4, and these are clearly my RB2s, but I think they're all in the lineup as well. Anyone in the top 15, let alone 18, is usually guaranteed to fit your lineup. Unless you're in a 4-team league, I doubt you're even considering to bench these players. If anything, you're grateful to have them as your RB2, if not RB1. But Javonte at the top of this tier is a lock in lineup. The volume is very safe to bet on. There's no real threat for other touches. Occasionally Malik Davis gets involved last few weeks, but definitely not going to favor him over Javonte. And the Vikings, while they're not like the most easy matchup you could find, they're not terrible. They're giving up just shy of 20 points per game, only 3.7 yards per carry. That's a bummer. But in terms of volume, it usually bodes well for game script. The Vikings are rarely in the lead, and 100 plus yards on the ground, 14 in the passing game, and 4 touchdowns last 4 games should bode well for Javonte. I would trust a touchdown, and he probably gives you at least 80 yards from scrimmage. So a 14 plus point projection is what I'm giving you from Javonte. There is no way I'm going to bench him. Same tier as someone like Bucky and RJ Harvey, but I only have room for the top 12 above him. So a great play, definitely not going to worry. I think he will outscore Bucky Irving, but I'm not going to lie. Yesterday, I did have Bucky ranked above Javonte. So that's why he's behind him. And I'm expecting a good performance out of Javonte. But Derrick Henry comes in right behind him, and I think you have to start him. The volume has been a little bit lower lately, but he's still playing well. And if we look at his last 3 games against the Bengals as a member of the Ravens, these are his average stats. 14.7 touches per game, only 1 reception per game, but a total of 90 yards from scrimmage per week and 3 touchdowns in that span. He has a rushing touchdown in all 3 of those matchups. So that's an average of 15.5 points per game. Last time they played 2 weeks ago, he was a bit reliant on a 44-yard reception. However, he went over 100 on the game, and I would definitely trust a touchdown this week. The Bengals have been the best matchup for running backs on the season, and although they're trending down at the moment, I'm still not going to panic. They're allowing 4.6 yards per carry in the last month. So Henry should be efficient. I'm hoping we get a house call. If we do, he's going to be a great play. If not, I think he'll be fine. Just an average RB2, and I met somewhere in the middle. He's at the high end of the RB2 projection. So I'm expecting 14 plus points again. He's averaging 15.5. I would start Derrick Henry. But Woody Marks, I was tempted to rank in the top 10 this week. The matchup against Arizona is so elite. The only one better would be the Jets, the matchup for Etienne. So these are the stats that the Cardinals are allowing to opposing running backs. Last 4 games, 31.3 points per game on 132 rushing yards, 39 receiving yards, 5.4 yards per carry, and 8 running back touchdowns. So based on those numbers, you're expecting 2 touchdowns this week out of the Texans backfield. And although Dare Ogunbowale vultured him last week, I think at least one will hit for Woody this week. So love the volume he's getting. Last 2 games, a minimum of 20 touches per game. And with Nick Chubb not expected to play, Woody Marks' volume will continue. So make sure he's active. I think he will, but he was limited in practice this week. He didn't practice at all on Wednesday, but I think at this stage of the year, everyone's banged up, and that's not a reason to be panicked on him sitting out this game. I expect him to play. I think he's a top 20 option. Top 15, actually, in my rankings. I think this matchup is one of the best you could ask for, so you should start Woody Marks. Quinshon Judkins, I got right behind him, and I'm trusting a lot of volume for Judkins as well. Marks already is averaging like 22 touches last 2 games. So can Judkins outperform him? Definitely possible. However, his matchup is not as good. The Chicago Bears are giving up only 18.4 points per game as opposed to 31 by Arizona. So I do think matchup is a tiebreaker for Woody Marks, but I absolutely am endorsing Quinshon Judkins as well. The volume should be insane, and I'm also excited about his efficiency in this game. The Bears matchup is decent at the moment, but where I'm excited is because they give up 5 yards per carry in the last month. If Judkins averages 5+ yards per carry this week, he will go over 100 yards very easily. So I would expect a touchdown as well. The Bears have allowed 3 in the last 4 weeks. And then from scrimmage, they're also giving up over 120 yards to the running back position. So love Judkins this week. Not as much as Woody, but still the volume is so guaranteed. There's no Sampson, so we could also see like 7 targets out of Judkins. If the matchup was better, I might be ranking Judkins higher than Taylor this week. I think there is a chance that Judkins drops 20+ in this matchup. I think you have to start him, but there's a lot of good players above him. Like, to pretend like you trust him more than someone like Derrick Henry against Cincinnati, that's a little bit overboard for my taste. So Judkins, a lock in the lineup, but still just an RB2 in my opinion. Safe. Very good play. And then DeAndre Swift also has lead upside in this game. Based on the matchup stats, he's deserving of a major upgrade. I'm obviously worried about Monangai vulturing you a little bit. That does factor in. But the Browns are giving up just shy of 27 points per game. And even if that's split in half, you'd be getting 13.5 from Swift this week. So I would trust him. 111 yards on the ground, 52 in the passing game. And that's where I really feel confident in betting on Swift. Monangai gets nowhere near the same target volume as Swift. He's definitely more involved in that category. So if you get 40 receiving yards from Swift this week, that's going to be awesome. And I would expect an insane amount of touches. I'm trusting Chicago in very frigid temperatures this week to run the ball a lot. So love all the running backs in this game, but because of the time split between him and Monangai, I think Judkins is a safer play. But I think a touchdown will hit on Swift. I feel more confident starting Swift than Kyle Monangai. So he's RB17, definitely a player I want to start. If he's your flex, I'd be very confident this week. But Kyren Williams, I'm a little bit worried about, not going to lie. His stats against Detroit are not great. In his 2 career games versus the Lions, he only averages 10.2 points per game. The volume at 17.5 touches, that's fine. 2 catches per game is also an average of his as well, but 62 total yards per game, that's very low efficiency and only 1 touchdown in those 2 games. So Kyren is in a timeshare right now with Blake Corum, and Corum looks way more explosive, looks more talented, and like the better player at this point in time. But I don't think he's earned the right to overtake Kyren in terms of volume yet, and that's where I'm still going to trust Kyren and not panic about Blake Corum. I think if you have Kyren Williams, the thought of benching him is pretty ludicrous, but I don't like the matchup. The Lions are the toughest matchup on the season. It's not a good spot at all. They are trending slightly up, but not in a great way. It's really hard to score a touchdown on the ground against Detroit. These are the stats. Last 4 weeks, an average of 14.8 points per game. If you're splitting that with Blake Corum, that's not good. You might get barely 10 points. And then 99 yards on the ground, 23 receiving yards per game, 3.8 yards per carry. I would be worried about that. And only 1 touchdown. Very low odds that you get a score. So if Blake Corum vultures you, you could totally get burned. But then on the flip side of the argument, I also envision a massive shootout between the Rams and Lions. There is no chance that the Rams are not dropping 30+, and the Lions are going to be right there with them. This is a massive high-scoring game. So for that reason alone, I would probably still bet on a touchdown to hit. In the Rams offense, it's so valuable, but the matchup stats are legit downgrades, and for that reason, he's outside my top 15. A more lower-end RB2, but in tier 4, there's no way I'm benching him. At the worst, he's one of the best flex plays you can find. I would still project a touchdown for Kyren, and I'm projecting one pretty much for everyone in the ranks above him. So I would still start him, but to pretend like I'm not a little worried, that would be a lie. If he only gives you 10 points, That's what he's averaging last 2 games against the Lions. That is not what you would hope for from Kyren Williams. So good luck, but I think you have to keep him in the lineup. And now we're entering tier 5, where just outside the top 18, these are more so high-end flex plays. There are some red flags now, and then there's definitely some reasons to be concerned. But some of these names are usually ranked higher, and then some of these names are usually ranked much lower. So some of them get big upgrades. Some of them I am panicking a little bit. And the most important decision this week, I think, hinges on Josh Jacobs. Is he healthy enough to get the workload that we're expecting? I think you have to start Jacobs just like Kyren. It would feel very odd to bench him. But in terms of matchups, this one's bottom 3. The Broncos are no joke. In the last 4 games, only giving up 13 points per game to the position on 61 rushing yards per game, 9 receiving yards per game, 3.8 yards per carry, and 3 running back touchdowns. So a touchdown is so critical with Jacobs this week. If there was ever a player I would trust to find the end zone, it is Josh Jacobs, though. So that's where I have to keep him top 20. There's not a chance I'm like vehemently benching him, but maybe if you have Woody Marks and Judkins on your bench, I might understand putting Jacobs as the flex play. I think there's higher upside and better matchups for someone like Woody Marks or DeAndre Swift. So good luck with Jacobs. The injury is a massive red flag. He didn't practice at all Wednesday or Thursday, but on Friday he was limited. This game is huge, and they definitely need to win in order to lock up the division. I think it's going to be critical because I am not convinced they're going to sweep the Bears next week. So Jacobs, I think, will play. It's a huge game, but I am expecting Emmanuel Wilson to factor in. And if you're telling me he's splitting 13 points per game allowed by the Broncos with someone else, then it's so dependent on a touchdown. And he's also been terrible from an efficiency standpoint this season. I don't know what it is, but Jacobs is not the same player this year. He has not quite been that efficient. So if you're getting less than 4 yards per carry and the game script is questionable, you're so dependent on a touchdown, but still in the top 20, I'm still saying start Jacobs, but absolutely pumping the brakes, lower expectations, just a lower end RB2, if not high-end flex play. But if he's a flex play, he's the best one you can find. I would still tell you to start him, but not if you're deciding between him and Woody Marks. Good luck with Jacobs. Devin Neal, I think, is an awesome start this week. I was tempted to rank him, honestly, above Kyren Williams, but once I saw him visually above guys like Kyren and Jacobs, I had to peel back and pump the brakes there. But honestly, I feel really excited about Devin Neal in this game. He played the Panthers in week 10, only had 4.6 points, but Kamara went off in that game. Kamara had a really good stat line. Kamara had 25 touches for 115 yards in that game, and I think Devin Neal is going to dominate in the volume. He's been really good last 2 games. I've liked what I've seen. Last week against the Buccaneers, he had 20 touches, 1 reception, and 84 yards with a touchdown. While the efficiency isn't there, he's yet to average over 4 yards per carry since the bye week. I still think the volume will carry you to a very safe floor, and then the matchup is awesome, indicative that Devin Neal might be one of the best options you can find. This Panthers matchup is awesome right now. Giving up 28 points per game is just behind matchups like Arizona for Woody Marks, a matchup like the Jets for Travis Etienne. This is an elite spot, would rank top 4 in the last month. So a massive upgrade, especially with Kamara's performance earlier. I think that's another reason to fully endorse him. And these are the average stats: 28.1 points per game, 130 on the ground, 36 in the passing game, 4.7 yards per carry. And I think he's going to score a touchdown because they've given up 6 in the last 4 weeks. So very high odds that he does find pay dirt. Honestly, I think the Saints could actually win this game like they won the first matchup, and Devin Neal, I think, will contribute significantly. So last week was very encouraging. I can't put him above Jacobs or Kyren. I just can't do it, but I was tempted to, and that's all you need to know. If you're deciding on Devin Neal in the flex against anyone I rank behind him, I vehemently think Devin Neal is much better. I think the matchup stats are so elite. You have to upgrade him. He's a clear top 20 play, in my opinion. So awesome for you if you picked him up off the waiver wire. I think he's a great start in the fantasy playoffs good luck in week 15. Rico Dowdle, though, I think in the same game offers some value as well. Rico's been awesome at times, but then he has kind of started to fade as of late. But this matchup against the Saints isn't that bad. Not elite, but not bad at all. Averaging 21.2 points per game allowed on 120 rushing yards, 20 in the passing game. 4.4 yards per carry is not terrible, but not elite. And then 4 touchdowns allowed. Odds are Dowdle is going to be fine. I have him at RB21. I think Devin Neal outperforms him, but I still think Dowdle is a player that's safe to start, at least as a flex play. Very high-end flex plays in this tier. I would keep him in the lineup. But last time we saw him play, Chuba Hubbard was a factor, and that touch split maybe factors in a bit more off the bye week. But I still think Dowdle's the guy you would want. I'm not willing to endorse Chuba. And ultimately, if he got you to the playoffs, I think more likely than not, you're going to start Rico Dowdle. But you can't pretend like those duds recently are a bit concerning. There have been a few times where Dowdle's just leaving a lot left on the bone. The stat line could be disappointing, but the matchup isn't scary enough. I would expect a touchdown more likely to go to Dowdle. Next player on the list is a backup Kyle Monangai, but in a touch split that I really feel confident in, and honestly, I could see a world where he outperforms DeAndre Swift this week. The Browns defense is kind of just given up against the run. They have really checked out. So these last 4 games are very indicative that this is a good matchup. Just ask Tony Pollard last week. There is some high-end production at the running back position against the Browns. Last 4 weeks, they're allowing 27 points per game, just shy of that, on 111 rushing yards, 52 receiving yards, 4.2 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns to the position. So if Swift dominates in the passing game, then maybe Monangai does burn you. But I also feel kind of confident, and especially given the temperature is going to be sub 20 degrees this week, I think the run game will be on display. And I know the Bears want to run the ball in general. I trust Monangai to get double-digit touches, and I think he finds the end zone. I think both Swift and Monangai will score this week. And if only one scores, we've actually seen kind of a more reliable role on the goal line for Monangai as of late. So I think that touchdown will hit. I think he's a very safe play, but he is ultimately a backup, and to rank him top 20 would be too risky for my liking. But right behind Rico Dowdle, I think the upside is worth it. That Browns matchup is pretty good. So if he splits it down the middle with Swift this week, the projection for both would be 13.5 points. The Browns are allowing 27 per game. So I think Monangai is a very good flex play. We've seen the upside. I think he's worth it in the lineup. But Charbonnet and Walker I have right behind him. And the path for success on Charbonnet, I would argue, is exactly the same as Monangai. You're hoping for a touchdown. Odds are it'll hit. And against the Colts, this matchup's been pretty good lately, up to 24 points per game allowed. And they have given up 6 touchdowns in the last 4 games. So very high chances that a touchdown is available this week, and Charbs is pretty dominant in terms of those goal line touches. So I do think Charbonnet is better than Walker this week. The yardage will be higher for Walker. He'll get more touches, but at the end of the week, Charbonnet will get the role inside the 10-yard line, and that'll be more valuable in fantasy. So that touchdown, I wish could just go to Walker for once, and we get all the production here. But sadly, Walker is too good to cede the volume, however, not good enough to give up those valuable touchdowns. I do think Walker will be less safe this week, but they're both high in flex plays. I like both. I think Charbonnet will go over 10 points. That touchdown will save you, and then Walker, I think, will give you at least 80 yards. The volume, I think, could be really high. Against Rivers, the time possession should be elite for Seattle, and especially in the second half, they should just grind out the clock and run it down the Colts' throat. They got a Rams game next week. I'm sure they would like to get out of this game as quickly as possible. So Walker, I think, will be fine, but Charbonnet, I think, scores a touchdown. And TreVeyon Henderson, right behind them, is really hard to rank. Because of Rhamondre Stevenson, you don't know exactly what you're going to get, but the touch split between the two has been pretty even. And even though Rhamondre has returned, TreVeyon is still giving you about 10 points per game as a floor. He's not finding the end zone, so that's a major liability. But the Bills matchup has been elite on the year. It's trending a bit down at the moment, but still giving up 22 points per game and 6 touchdowns to the running back position in the last 4 weeks. Typically speaking, a touchdown is a very safe bet to be making against Buffalo. And at this point of the year, I think off the bye they're going to incorporate TreVeyon a little bit more. If not now, then it's never going to happen. And I feel like I've been saying that so many times this season. But if they go back to Rhamondre and he fumbles away this game, then Mike Vrabel deserves to lose, not just this game, but the division. It would be so frustrating if Rhamondre fumbles this game away. So I think TreVeyon, at the very least, will give you what he's been doing the last 2 games. And if that 10-point floor is his production this week, then he's a very safe flex play. I don't think he's going to give you a bust performance because the volume is still like 16, 17 touches, even with Rhamondre Stevenson back. He gives you about 3 receptions and he's been very efficient. There's been like a minimum of 65 rushing yards on like 13 carries last few games. So I'm trusting TreVeyon from a floor standpoint, but because of the matchup, I think a touchdown is a decent bet to make on top of that. And the upside we know is 30 points. If there's one explosive player that I think might be ranked too low in my rankings this week, it is TreVeyon Henderson. The potential is absolutely through the roof. He can win you the entire week. So good luck. I doubt that's what happens, but against the Bills, anything is possible. And this game also has some snow factoring in, so they might be leaning on the run a little extra. So TreVeyon, I'm really excited about, but to tell you I know exactly what he'll do, that would be a lie. I think at the minimum, though, he's giving you 10 points. I think from a safety net standpoint, TreVeyon will be fine. But you can also tell me Rhamondre vultures him twice, and he shits the bed with only like 12 touches and 70 yards. So good luck. You're going to need it, but very high upside. I wanted to rank him higher, but just couldn't. But up to this point, I would say the general argument I am making is that you should have all these players in your lineup. The top 25 running backs, I think at worst, are some of the best flex plays you can find. And if you don't have the depth, if you have one of these guys as your RB2, I think that's perfectly fine. I wouldn't be worried about getting less than 10 points from all these players. I think a touchdown is pretty safe. And even if it doesn't hit, like Walker, for example, I still think the efficiency will be good enough where you're not going to be too upset with the outcome this week. I'm projecting at least 10 plus points for all of these players in the top 25. So start these guys. They're the best options. But tier 6 is absolutely the low end flex territory. And at this point, I think you can be arguing to be benching most of them. There are some names that are just too difficult to feel that safe about, whether it's the rookie Omarion Hampton coming at the top of this tier or a backup like Blake Corum and Dave Montgomery at the bottom. There is some red flags, but let's stick with Hampton. Let's start at the top where Hampton is still in a touch split with Kimani Vidal. Last week was not good enough to know exactly what the role will be for him on the goal line. Like if he didn't score a touchdown last week, you would have gotten burned, but he did have over 10 points thanks to it. So he looked good. He did have more volume than Kimani, but Vidal played well enough without Hampton healthy where I don't think Vidal is going to go away. Hampton needs a backup. They originally planned to have Najee Harris spell him quite often, but then Najee had the fireworks injury, then Najee went on IR, and then Hampton opened the door where Kimani Vidal has proven he's a good option in the NFL. So Hampton's just not going to get 20 plus touches this week, and the Chiefs matchup is not easy. Let's not pretend like the Chiefs defense isn't good against the run. So these are the stats. Last 4 games, an average of 18 points per game, 72 yards on the ground, 17 in the passing game, 3.6 yards per carry is one of the lowest we've mentioned all video, and 5 touchdowns. That's the only value I can find in this matchup. A touchdown is the only way it works out for Hampton. But back in week 1, he didn't have a great stat line either. He only had 15 carries for 48 yards, had 2 catches on 2 targets for 13 yards, but no touchdown, only 7.1 points in week 1. I thought he would be a lot better back in week 1 in that game. So this is a tough spot. Not going to sugarcoat it. He's a major risk factor. I think he's talented enough, though, where he's better than everyone else in the rankings. And if you have him, I still think you're getting a decent floor. Last week was encouraging. They still favored him on the goal line, despite Kimani Vidal factoring in quite a lot. But Hampton, I think, is just a floor play with some risk. And at RB26, I don't think he's a lock in the lineup at all. In my subscriber league team, I'm benching him for TreVeyon, and then I could put him in the flex, but honestly, I see higher upside for someone like Isaiah Likely in that matchup against the Bengals. I'm actually benching Hampton for Isaiah Likely this week. The matchup's bad. The Chiefs' season's on the line. If they can stop any position right now, it's the running back. And the hand injury for Justin Herbert, I think, kind of caps the offense a little bit. And Herbert still scrambles enough. I could see any touchdown available this week get vultured by the quarterback as well. So Hampton, a bit risky, but at RB26 in the flex discussion for sure, and not the worst bet, probably still gives you around 10 points. I think he'll be fine, but I think you will need a touchdown. Without it, I think you could get screwed, but I think he's good enough to flex if you need him. Tyrone Tracy, right behind him. I wanted to rank him higher, but Devin Singletary factors in enough to limit the upside here. And if you're telling me he gets vultured by Singletary, wouldn't be shocked at all. I even think Jackson Dart might be vulturing you multiple times. So it's just the matchup why I'm upgrading him. But at RB27, he's a very legit flex play in my book. I think he has a very high ceiling in this game. The matchup against Washington is a good one. They've allowed 31.1 points per game in the last 4 weeks, 148 yards on the ground, 36 receiving yards per game, 5.4 yards per carry, and 7 running back touchdowns. So if not for the touch split here, this matchup is as good as Arizona. So he could be on par with Woody Marks this week if he didn't have to split time with Singletary. So that's where I just don't know exactly what you're going to get. You might get great efficiency, even on like 20 touches. Tracy could give you 80 yards and still no touchdown, and that's where I'm a little worried. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. So I wish he had it all to himself, but because he doesn't, he's behind Hampton in my rankings. I still don't think he's more talented than Hampton or TreVeyon, and the matchup is the only indication why you should trust him. But we were worried that he wouldn't be healthy. Before the bye week, he was carted off the field late in the game, and thankfully he's okay. He's cleared to play, he's fully healthy, and he's going to be on the field. But to know exactly what I'm going to get, that's where I'm a little reluctant to fully endorse him. But the matchup says start him as a high-end flex play. Maybe I'm too low in the ranks, but right behind him, I think another RB1 worth upgrading is Chris Rodriguez. In the same game, Rodriguez gets an elite matchup against the Giants. They've been top 4 on the season, and last month they're allowing 28 points per game, 135 rushing yards, 38 receiving yards per game, 6.6 yards per carry, and 5 running back touchdowns. Rodriguez gives you nothing in the passing game, so it's all going to be dependent on his rushing stats. He's also banged up. He missed practice earlier this week, but I think he'll be active, and you want to make sure, but it's also possible that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt will benefit the most. Against the Giants, you would expect at least 1 touchdown out of this backfield. So that would go to Rodriguez more likely than not. And despite kind of capped volume, he's only getting like 12 carries per game. He's done some stuff with it. He's usually giving you about 40 to 55, sometimes even 60 plus rushing yards. And if you get a touchdown, you will go over 10 points. So good luck here. The matchup is great, but the injury is a minor red flag. And to tell me that you are hyper confident that Chris Rodriguez in the fantasy playoffs is actually going to be the right play, I would be sad if I started him and he shit the bed. If you tell me he gives you 4 points, I wouldn't be shocked either. So big risk factor, but the matchup says don't worry about it as much. And perhaps I'm too low. Perhaps he's going to be even better than someone like Devin Neal in a great spot. So good luck on Rodriguez. High scoring game here, but the Commanders offense is a little hard to fully trust. Aaron Jones, though, gets a decent matchup against Dallas. It's pretty neutral right now. They're giving up 20 points per game on 55 rushing, 54 receiving yards, 4.1 yards per carry, 4 running back touchdowns as well. So if you get vultured by Jordan Mason this week, wouldn't shock me, but last week Aaron Jones still had the more heavy volume between the two, and for that reason I still think he's a safer play than Mason. But the touchdown will be pretty critical, and if you don't get it, I could envision a very bad game out of Aaron Jones. So there's some major risk factors in this tier. I don't see much of a floor on any player, but the floor I think is fine. I think it'll be a close game against Dallas, and although their defense is stepping up a little bit, there's still a very neutral average spot. My projection on Jones doesn't change very much. So I think they'll be competitive. I think a touchdown isn't a terrible bet to make. Jones has upside, but also more likely about an 8-point projection is what I would expect. I would be reluctant to endorse Jones as a must start. At this stage of the game, I'm probably benching most of these players, but Tony Pollard was lights out last week. I might be ranking him too low. The Niners matchup is also not terrible, but if there's one position that does get a downgrade against San Francisco, it would be running back. They're only giving up 17.4 points per game. So if you split that with Spears, maybe not down the middle, but maybe like 2/3 of that goes to Pollard, you're barely going to get 10 points. And then where you can kind of exploit the Niners is in the passing game. In the last 4 games, San Francisco's given up 17 points per game to the running back position and only 2 touchdowns. That's what propelled Pollard last week. So without a house call, you're getting very low production out of Pollard. And although I think Spears is now clearly behind him, I don't know if Pollard has the skill set to exploit this matchup, because where you can benefit against the Niners is not on the ground. They only give up 69 rushing yards per game. It's in the passing game, 41 receiving yards per game, and that's definitely Tyjae Spears' area of expertise. So Pollard still catches some targets, but not as many as Tyjae. And if you're not getting any PPR value this week, then the Niners become a difficult spot. So very touchdown dependent as well. I would rather bet against it. Last week was fun, but I wouldn't assume it's going to happen all the time. So good luck with Pollard. I think I'm going to bench him. And at this point, I'm going to be benching Jaylen Warren. Maybe you have to start him as a flex play, I understand. But at this stage of the ranks, we're outside the top 30. And I don't think with no teams on bye, that's worth it. So I would bench him unless the format's pretty deep. I don't think it's worth it. The matchup is terrible against the Dolphins. They are allowing the fewest fantasy points overall in the last 4 games, down to 12.4 on average. They haven't given up a single touchdown in the last 4 games. So Warren needs it to have any upside, and I don't think it hits this week. He might be fine in terms of efficiency. You might get like 75 total yards, but I could also see Kenny Gainwell really factor in and really limit you. I think the Dolphins are a legit defense. I don't want to test. So Warren in a big time split has burned me at times. He's been pretty safe, but this week I hate the matchup. Not expecting a touchdown, so very capped upside. I would bench Warren. I am fading the Steelers backfield. But Blake Corum as the handcuff to Kyren, very hard to trust. That matchup against Detroit is terrible, but Corum's on a heater. Corum's playing very, very well right now and is earning a lot more work. So if he looks as explosive this week, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And he could give you another house call. He has been lights out. So at the very least, you should have him on the bench so that nobody else picks him up and starts him against you. I don't think I'd start him over Kyren, but I understand, at least considering that, he's playing lights out. And I think that's a main reason why I'm more worried about Kyren this week. The matchup's bad, but the Rams offense should be very high scoring, but Corum could play vulture, and to pretend like he doesn't have very high upside would be naive. So potentially a league winner, potentially a roster liability. As a backup running back, I think I'm going to bench him. But just outside my top 30. This is the highest rank I've had all year on Corum, and to be honest, I feel like I might be too low. I think in DFS, he is a probably lower rostered player that I'd be very tempted to pick up. So interesting bet on Corum this week, but bad matchup, so I don't think I'm willing to endorse it. Against Arizona was so much better than what he gets this week against Detroit. So no thanks, but rather tempting. And in the same game, we got David Montgomery, who I would probably just bench this week. The Rams have been a great defense against running backs all season, and Montgomery is very touchdown dependent. If he didn't have a house call against Dallas from like 30 yards out, then last week he would have been bad. He only had 6 carries on the game, but he did turn that into 60 yards. He's still very talented. Just like Corum, he can score from anywhere, and there is upside, but I think in this matchup, I'm going to pass. I don't think it's worth it. The Rams have been really good on defense as of late, but if I'm wrong on this, I wouldn't be shocked at all. You could tell me that Montgomery is going to be a top 20 player and better than Rico Dowdle, Devin Neal, even better than Jacobs this week. Wouldn't be shocked either, but as the backup after last week's low volume, I don't think I want to take that risk in the playoffs. So good luck if you're going to start Montgomery, but it's not my cup of tea. In week 15, I think it's too risky. And now we hit tier 7 where most of these guys are all handcuffs in the first place, so not going to start any of them, but some of them have value and some of them are starters. Maybe you've been wondering where they've been in the rankings, but I do have Emmanuel Wilson here at number 34. There's a world where Jacobs doesn't play this week, but I would expect Jacobs to be active. So Wilson probably doesn't score a touchdown. I would still expect Jacobs to be the guy on the goal line, but I could also see a pretty significant touch split between the two. So Wilson, I have 2 tiers below Jacobs, but Jacobs doesn't get a great matchup. So even if Wilson does get the start, I don't think he's an awesome play. I think he'd be on par with someone like Aaron Jones and Chris Rodriguez, to be honest with you, if Jacobs doesn't play. I hate the matchup. I really don't like it. And Wilson would be very touchdown dependent. I wouldn't expect that to hit. So decent pickup, at least as a handcuff. You probably want him to Jacobs, but at this stage of the week, I think Jacobs has practiced just enough to assume that he'll be active. So good luck on Wilson, but it's kind of just a contingent rank with Jacobs' health status. And then Rhamondre could maybe be lights out this week. The Bills matchup is good. He had 2 touchdowns against them back in week 5, but he could also have multiple fumbles. And to tell me you're going to start someone who can fumble the game away in the fantasy playoffs is not my cup of tea. So I could be ranking him incorrectly. Maybe I should swap him and TreVeyon, and that would be a lot more accurate. But personally, if I'm starting a Patriots running back this week, it's TreVeyon, and I'm going to avoid Rhamondre entirely. I don't think it's worth it. I think you might get another fumble to come back. So let's avoid that. I think Vrabel will come to his senses and favor TreVeyon in the touch split, but Rhamondre doesn't go away. Rhamondre is still going to get double-digit carries, more likely than not. So could easily score a touchdown against the Bills. It's always possible, but I'm going to pass. I think the risk isn't worth it. And then Gainwell gets such a bad matchup. Although he's played well, I'm fading Warren, and I don't think I'm confident enough to rank Gainwell ever above Warren. So bad matchup here. Very touchdown dependent, and the Dolphins aren't giving up an inch. I don't think Gainwell will work out, but I do think the Steelers win the game, and they've been playing well in the running game specifically. I do think Gainwell could contribute, but I don't think I'm going to bet on it. As a backup in the playoffs, it's not worth it. Every time I've believed in Gainwell and ranked him higher, he has burned me. I have been inaccurate with my projections of Gainwell. I've been chasing his points, and usually it doesn't work out the week after. So gonna pass, but if there's a player I am telling you to bench outright, it's Breece Hall. I have no desire at all to be starting Breece Hall this week. The quarterback situation is terrible. Tyrod Taylor is already ruled out, so we're getting a 3rd string quarterback here. Brady Cook will get the start for the Jets. So no effing chance that offense is going to do anything. The Jags are also a bottom 5 matchup against the position, and Breece Hall will be dog shit. So even with 30 touches, you couldn't pay me to start Breece. I think even on 30 touches, he's not going to go over 50 yards from scrimmage. Maybe there's a lot of garbage time, but I wouldn't bet on it. The Jags will clamp down, and the Jets will give up. So Isaiah Davis might factor in. Breece was also questionable earlier in the week with an injury. He is active now. He will play, but maybe his knee injury will hold him out. If they're losing by 30 in the second half, I could easily see them just bench their starters and Isaiah Davis take the reins. So good luck with Breece, but I'm telling you to outright bench him. I think it's a losing proposition. And same thing with Kareem Hunt. I have no desire to put Kareem Hunt in my lineup. Last week, I expected a touchdown. It did hit against Houston, but even with it, he didn't have an awesome performance. And against the Chargers, I think it's less likely to work out. The Chargers are going to put the nail in the coffin. The Chargers are going to win, and the Chiefs offense will look bad. So Kareem Hunt gets a bad matchup here, very touchdown dependent, and at his age, I just don't think it's ever going to work out. The efficiency will be dog shit, and I don't think he finds the end zone. So bench Kareem Hunt. I see a bit more upside than Breece Hall, but he's not as talented as Breece. The volume will be higher for Breece Hall. So bench both him and Breece Hall. Those are 2 starters I have no desire to start this week. And then Kimani Vidal right behind him still factors in, could maybe vulture Hampton like he did last week. He didn't vulture him on the goal line, but had very good production in the passing game specifically. Vidal didn't go away. So the matchup against the Chiefs is tough, but I could see him factor in. Maybe it's worth your time. I don't think I'm going to start him though. And Bhayshul Tuten gets an awesome matchup, but I don't think I'm going to press my luck there either. Etienne is looking very dominant right now, and although Tuten can get a touchdown, that's the only path for success in this tier. I would just bench him. I don't think it's worth it. The volume is not high enough with Tuten, but that Jets game is probably going to be a massive blowout. I could see garbage time really salvage you. Maybe now that I think about it, Tuten should maybe be higher in this tier, maybe around like Emmanuel Wilson and Rhamondre in terms of upside. Tuten could dominate in the second half, but I would still bench him behind Blake Corum. I think is clearly a player I would bench, but the Jets matchup does offer some potential. Devin Singletary might actually be the better running back in the Giants backfield. The Commanders matchup is elite, but I don't think I'm going to go that direction. I think if I'm starting a Giant running back, it's going to be Tyrone Tracy. Tracy is still above Singletary on the depth chart, but Singletary has been getting some goal line looks, has scored some touchdowns. Perhaps I'm underestimating Devin Singletary, but there's no effing chance I'm starting Bam Knight. He can't run the ball to save his life, and Michael Carter is actually more efficient. But against Houston, no player is going to be a value this week other than probably Michael Wilson and Trey McBride. So no effing chance. Bam Knight is dog shit. And those are my top 42 players. The only ones I would really consider, and we have 3 starters on the bottom tier, Breece Hall, Kareem Hunt, and Bam Knight, I think have to be on the bench this week. But I would like to show you my top 50. These 8 players did not make the cut. However, Tyjae Spears could get some touches this week in the passing game. There might be some upside in garbage time. With JCM, there's a chance that Rodriguez is not 100%, so JCM also factors in, but wouldn't start him despite the great matchup. Brian Robinson maybe gets some garbage time against the Titans, so that could be interesting. Chuba Hubbard played well last time we saw him, but I think he's clearly behind Rico Dowdle, so no thanks on that. And then Jalen Wright, I wrote Etienne for some reason, but is behind Achane, would have some value if Achane doesn't play, but I would assume Achane is going to be fine. And then Ogunbowale will be behind Woody Marks because Nick Chubb's not going to play, so maybe another touchdown for him in a great matchup. Samaje Perine at the Ravens could play well, but I would bet against it. And then Ty Johnson maybe scores another touchdown against the Patriots. In the snow, he has had some high upside at times, but really I wouldn't start any of them outside the top 40, no chance. But those are my top 50, and these are my top 42. These are all my running back rankings in week 15. So the top 3 are no-brainers. Bijan was lights out last night. I think Gibbs and CMC will be even better. Etienne gets the best matchup you could ask for, so he's going to be an elite start. Absolutely have to lock him in. I think he's one of the best plays you can find. James Cook, even in a bad matchup, I think will play well in the snow, so good efficiency this week. Achane should play, should have insane volume. Always got to start him. And then Chase Brown has played awesome against the Ravens in the first place, but with no T. Higgins, I would trust at least 7+ targets yet again. But Jonathan Taylor, I almost ranked even lower than this. Bad matchup with Rivers. Don't know what you're going to get, but it's still Taylor. Cannot bench him. Saquon and Jeanty, I think, have great matchups and will go off against each other. I think both players have over 100 yards from scrimmage. Love Saquon and Jeanty this week. But Harvey's been dominant since Dobbins went down. A touchdown is on lock, so got to start him. I trusted Bucky Irving, but didn't score a touchdown. Got vultured by Sean Tucker. That was a bummer. And then Javonte maybe doesn't get the best matchup, but still a lock in the lineup based on volume alone. Can never bench him. Henry plays really well against the Bengals in this division, so gonna trust him as well, expecting 15+ points from both of them. Woody Marks, I think, goes off with elite volume in an elite matchup. He's a must start. And then Quinshon Judkins, with no competition behind him, will get insane volume in a decent matchup. I think he's going to be good. Definitely top 20. And then DeAndre Swift might get vultured by Monangai, but the matchup's great. I would trust him as well to play lights out against the Browns. But Kyren plays pretty mediocre against Detroit, an average of 10 points per game. With Corum emerging and the Lions matchup being so bad, I am a bit worried on Kyren. But Jacobs, if he was fully healthy, would be ranked higher, but he's not, and the Broncos matchup is terrible, so got to downgrade him a little bit, but probably still scores a touchdown. Still think I would start him. And then Devin Neal getting insane volume right now. A great matchup against Carolina. I think an insane upgrade, an excellent high-end flex play. And then Dowdle, got to keep starting him. He's been too good this year. Monangai could vulture Swift, has a great matchup, very valuable flex play as well. And then Sharbs and Walker, always good flex plays, but definitely more likely to get a touchdown out of Charbonnet, then Walker. TreVeyon, elite upside, but only averaging 10 points per game since Rhamondre has come back to the lineup. And Mike Vrabel could definitely piss us off one more time. But TreVeyon, I think, is the better option against the Bills. It's a good matchup to chase. Expecting a touchdown from TreVeyon as well. But Hampton, hard to bet on with Kimani not going away. The Chiefs matchup is tough, so his talent is awesome, but not the safest play you can find. Tracy is in a touch split with Singletary, but an elite matchup should be a very safe option. And same with Rodriguez, elite upside with a good matchup. A touchdown is usually safe to bet on. But Aaron Jones and Tony Pollard, very low-end flex plays, pretty average. In the top 30, they're fine, but not expecting anywhere near what Pollard put up last week. And then Warren gets a terrible matchup in his touch split. I would avoid it. The Dolphins aren't giving up any touchdowns to running backs right now. And then Corum's playing out of his mind, but against the Lions, do you really trust a backup running back? I think I'll pass more likely than not. But in the same game, Montgomery could also score a touchdown and have elite upside. Valuable, but not a good matchup. I think I'm going to likely pass on Montgomery. But Emmanuel Wilson, a handcuff to Jacobs, could have a lot of volume, but probably doesn't move the needle. Rhamondre, I think, could fumble the game away, but could also be better than TreVeyon. Good matchup here, but I'll pass. Gainwell, every time I believe in him, lets me down. So in this matchup, gotta fade him. Breece Hall with Brady Cook at quarterback, going to be a terrible offense in general, so Hall has no upside. Hunt, I don't think scores a touchdown, going to be a bad game for him. Vidal hasn't gone away, but I trust Hampton more. And then Tuten probably has higher upside than anyone in this tier, but also could get you less than 6 touches. I think Etienne is not going to share as much as you would like, but Singletary could be the vulture to Tracy, has high upside as well. Great matchup for him, but Bam Knight in a bad matchup has been so inefficient, I have to bench him. Despite being a starter, he's not inside my top 40. So those are my running back rankings. If you still have questions, let me know down below. And I wish you luck. That's it for this video. I'll see you next time with receiver rankings. And that's it for me. I'm Adam Riancho. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.